Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa-chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Have you heard of ignorance studies? Today, I'm just coming out of a 2-day conference on unknowability at the New School. Akash there was sitting next to me. Very interesting conference. And the last speaker in the last session today was a sociology professor from the University of Sussex. I did not know about it, that there is a full field called ignorance studies. They even have a handbook. I asked her in the Q&A session, are you aware that in India, in Vedanta, for a period of nearly 1,000 years, from say 800 AD, from Shankaracharya's time to about 1700, there was a intense discussion on ignorance, avidya. And she said, no, I don't know that. And so ignorance. And she was very interested. She wanted the information, and they are going to publish articles about the Vedantic concept of ignorance in their Routledge publishers, a very well-known academic publisher. They're going to bring out a handbook of ignorance. And so they will have articles about Vedanta. That's what she is in charge of the project. So she said she will include it in the next time. And she said, I know that there are areas where we are ignorant about it. So we would like to know this. Very interesting conference. There were mathematicians, world-famous mathematicians, physicists. John Barrow, a well-known physicist, he gave the keynote address yesterday at the Tishman Auditorium in the New School. I was just reading how so many physicists, mathematicians, are interested in consciousness studies. One of the latest articles which I read, Ed Witten, who is a physicist, theoretical physicist, string theorist at Princeton University. He is now popularly on the net compared to that if we have anybody today of the stature of Newton and Einstein, it's Ed Witten. So he's like that. Somebody called him the smartest man on the planet today, living person today. So he was asked about consciousness, and this article, it quotes him. I just read it today. He says that, I believe consciousness is going to remain a mystery. As we study the brain further, biologists and neuroscientists will learn more and more about the workings of the brain. But why those workings are associated with something like consciousness, that is going to remain a mystery. And then he goes on to say, I feel it is easier to understand the Big Bang than it is to understand consciousness. Another physicist, Andrei Linde, he's a Russian theoretical physicist. He asks this question, is it then possible that consciousness can exist without matter? Well, of course, I know you're all Vedanta students, you're all nodding, yes, yes, yes. Is it possible that consciousness can exist without matter? And then he goes on to say that I believe that the study of the universe and the study of consciousness are connected. And probably as science develops further, we will come to a point where we'll realize that we cannot understand the universe, we cannot understand one without the other. This, consciousness and the universe. So these are extraordinary things for physicists to be saying, mathematicians to be saying. So we are really living in extraordinary times. And when unknowability is the theme of the conference, there were historians and literature professors and sociologists, anthropologists, psychologists, of course mathematicians, climate change scientists from NASA. So the whole theme was, what are the limits to understanding? So I told the professor that it was the ancient Indians, they called it Maya, the theory of Maya. Good. So it will be in the Handbook of Ignorance. The second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we were discussing the section where Arjuna asked a question about the nature of the enlightened person. The word used is very significant. Sthita prajna, stabilized wisdom. We often understand many things. We learn many things and understand many things, but we find it difficult to apply it in life. Stabilized wisdom is a person who can live the wisdom, who has understood something and then can live it. Erich Fromm, very well-known psychoanalyst, he said, insight divorced from practice remains ineffective. Insight, your understanding. Unless we try it out in life, it remains ineffective. So Sthita Prajna is the person who's living what he or she has realized. Now, it is very difficult, Krishna points out, if our sensory system and our mind, at two levels there are problems. One is at the sensory system. They're very powerful, very turbulent. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Today there was a professor, Stuart Firestein. He is a biologist, and his whole life he has been working on smell. How do we smell? And so at the end today somebody asked him, so are you close to it? And he said, we thought we were. We are now about to discard whatever we did. Now we are going to change the whole thing. We suddenly realized, no, it's not that way. Anyway, so these are very powerful systems. Then there is something subtler than the senses, which is even more powerful. The subtler, the more powerful. What is subtler than the senses? The mind. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas. So these two are obstacles. They have to be controlled and brought and made to serve our purpose, to help us on our path to enlightenment. Otherwise, they're going to be huge obstacles to enlightenment. And how so? We saw in the verses 62 and 63. If you remember, dhyayato viṣhayān pungsa sangasteshu pajāyate sangat sanjāyate kāma kāmāt krodho bhijāyate krodhāt bhavati sammoha sammohāt smriti vibhrama smriti bhrangshat buddhināsha buddhināshat pranashyati. As I said last time, like Buddha talked about the eightfold path to liberation, this is the eightfold path to destruction. What are the 8 steps to destruction? They are not to be practiced. These are warnings. Constantly dwelling on sense objects. Dhyayato viṣhayān. Dwelling means thinking about things of the world. What happens? Sangasteshu, a stickiness develops, a tendency to dwell on that, an attachment to sense objects develops, even without our knowing it. I am thinking about it, I can choose to think about it, I can choose not to think about it. If I say that, I am deluding myself. The moment I try not to think about it, you see. So, sangasteshu pajāyate, an attachment, a stickiness comes to it. Eyes want to see certain things. The nose, wants to smell certain things. Touch, we like certain touch. Sound. Then what happens from that attachment? Sangat sanjāyate kāmaha. That attachment develops into desire, a powerful psychic force. Let me have this. Let me enjoy that. Let that be mine. It could be a person, could be a thing, could be an experience, could be an object, could be a place, a job, an honor, a status, anything. Let that be mine. And from that, if those desires are satisfied, then the result is greed, more, lobha. If it's not satisfied, then what it says? Krodha, anger. Behind every anger, every flash of irritation is desire thwarted. You say righteous indignation, maybe righteous indignation or whatever, but indignation is indignation. There's something that has been thwarted there. Something that you wanted, did not go your way. The result of anger is never good. Either the result of desire. The result of desire is never good. Either greed or anger. Both of them, same thing. Anger and desire are two sides of the same thing. They're connected. And then, krodhat bhavati sammoha, delusion comes from anger. What should I do? What should I not do? Then he says, sammohat smriti vibhrama. From delusion, all that we learned, all the Vedanta classes and the notes and all are completely forgotten. All the wisdom is completely forgotten. And smritir bhrangshat buddhinashaha. With the loss of memory. Loss of memory, he does not mean actually amnesia. It's all there, but I'm unable to recover. Those who know the story of Mahabharata, you recall Karna, unable to recover the knowledge. He was cursed. That when you really need this knowledge, it will not be available to you. So that's a kind of a story which applies to all of us. If we are not really settled in that wisdom, if it's not natural to us, when we really need it, it is not available to us. So, smritir bhrangshat buddhinasha. The intellect then is at a loss to decide what to say, to whom, what to say, what not to say, what to do and what not to do. Completely confused. What I should not say, I say it. What I should not do, I do it. What I should do, I do not do it. How do I know that? Because later I have guilt. Guilt is very interesting. How interesting that I feel about my own action. How could I do that? I wish I had not done that. I wish I had not said that. How could I do that? How is that possible? How is guilt possible? I am acting according to my best thinking and best interests. But no, I am not. Sometimes I'm acting in such a way which we come to regret. So regret and guilt. Buddhinashat pranashyati. It short circuits. Anger, desire, short circuits. Even neuroscientists said that when that flash of anger comes, your neocortex, which is supposed to deal with the more advanced functions of the brain, the thing is it requires some time. Whereas the animal brain does not require any time. It's designed in such a way to respond immediately to danger. In a flash it responds. In fight or flight. A response is in a flash, not a considered response. So the neocortex is bypassed. Even neuroscience says that this is very good psychology actually. It actually works that way. Now the next verse. Buddhinashat pranashyati. So the final thing is that we fall away from our spiritual path. And this is not forever. It happens again and again. Sometimes micro incidents, sometimes major problems. Then the commentator in this book, these old Sanskrit commentaries are very interesting. What they do is, they connect the verses. So something has been said, before the next verse they'll insert a sentence. So the whole thing makes sense. So this commentator, the one I'm holding here, is Sridhara Swami. He lived about 700 years ago. His commentary on the Bhagavatam is very well known. He's a master commentator on the Bhagavatam. This is called Sridhari Subodhini. Subodhini literally means easily understood. It's a very simple commentary. So what does he say before the next verse comes? Nanu indriyanam vishaya-pravana swabhavanam nirodhum ashakyatvad ayam dosho dushpariparihara stita-pragyatvam katham syad. He says, but the senses are difficult to control. If they are difficult to control, then these faults, what you just mentioned, are very difficult to overcome. They're almost bound to happen to us. And if they are bound to happen, then this stabilized wisdom is not possible. We're talking about enlightenment as the wisdom has been stabilized. Sthita pragya. Sthita means stabilized, pragya, wisdom. But the stabilized wisdom is not possible if this chain of events is natural. It's bound to happen to us. If it does happen to us, how can I get stabilized wisdom? So the next verse comes. 64. Please repeat after me. Rāga-dveṣha-viyuktais rāga-dveṣa-viyuktais viṣhayān indriyaiśh charan, viṣhayān indriyaiśh charan, ātma-vaśhyair-vidheyātmā, ātma-vaśhyair-vidheyātmā, prasādam adhigachchhati, prasādam adhigachchhati. The person of controlled senses, that person can go and mix with the world, interact with the world, even enjoy the objects of the senses, with controlled senses, with the senses in check. Such a person enjoys a joyful serenity of mind. The word used here is prasādam adhigachchhati. Now, normally, when to a Hindu, when you say prasad, it means the offered food. So food is very important in religion. So the prasad is the food that is offered to God, and then you take it as prasada. Bhoga is offered to God and it's taken as prasada. So sacred food. But here it means the joyful, a serene and joyful state of the mind. A serene and joyful state of the mind, prasada. That is very conducive to spiritual practice. If you have that, spirituality is easy. If one does not have that, it's a terrible struggle. What kind of mind is aimed at here? A joyful yet serene. And not just once, generally. It becomes a tendency. It becomes a habit to remain in that state. How do you get that? It says, move around the world, interact with the world, do what you have to do, but with senses in check, under your control. So I remember, it's like somebody was teaching me to drive in LA, in California. And so one of the things I remember they said was that don't get too close to the car. The difference between you and the car ahead, there's a certain distance you have to maintain, and that depends upon your speed. So if you're moving slowly, the distance is less, but if you're moving fast, the distance is much more. So that you should be able to stop. By the time you apply your brakes and the car stops, there will be a distance which is covered, and which should ideally be before you hit him. Yeah. They're very funny, the instructors. I had a lot of problem with parallel parking, so... By the way, I never mastered it, so... So one of them went that, it's very simple. You sort of edge in there and you roll back till you bump into the other car behind, gently, and then you roll forward until you bump into the car in front, and then come in back, and in between you stop. I thought he meant it seriously. Only for a moment. Now this ability to judge the movement of the car so that it will not hit the car in front, it's a very good way of understanding what are the inertias, the psychological inertias within us when we are interacting with the world. What pushes your buttons? The American phrase is there. What makes you angry, what tempts you, what bores you, exhausts you, irritates you. Know that and remain within your tolerances. Don't expose yourself to a situation where you're almost bound to fail. Whether it's anger or greed or irritation or prejudice or hatred, try to carefully remain so that you are able to stop before you hit the guy ahead of you. So, rāga-dveṣha-viyuktais. How do you do that? Use the senses to contact their objects, that means deal with the objects in the world, without raga-dveṣha. Raga-dveṣha means attachment and aversion. There's an automatic conditioning where the senses are pulled to their objects. That should not be there. There's an automatic conditioning where instinctively we have aversion to certain people, situation. That also should not be there. The senses should be under the control of the intellect. It's easier said than done. That's true. With this kind of a mind and sensory system, if one interacts with the world, you do your job, talk with people, whatever relationships, whatever is going on, your mind will remain serene and peaceful. Peaceful, serene, and joyful, happy. Arjuna had asked 4 questions, if you remember. What is the nature of the enlightened person in samadhi, in meditation? Number 1. And 3 questions regarding the nature of the enlightened person while interacting with the world. How does he talk? How does he sit? How does he move around? Kim prabhasheta, kim asita, vrajeta kim. This is the answer to the 4th question. How does this enlightened person move around? The move around means not physically move around in that sense. It means how does this person interact with the world? We are acting, we deal with people, we work, whatever we are doing in the world. How is that person different from us? Often, people are engaged with the world impelled by their senses, trying to go about fulfilling the demands of the senses or the mind. Whereas this person is not like that. Such a person, he says, prasādam adhigachchhati, comes to a joyful serenity in God. Joyful serenity in God. So worth thinking about. This prasāda, this joyful serenity in God. You see, the question is this. Those who have read Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, again and again he says the one thing necessary is a divine restlessness. Just the opposite of serenity and relaxation. He says divine restlessness, vyakulata in Sanskrit, in Bengali also, vyakulata. He says if you have that, a divine restlessness, I must realize God. I must get enlightenment. I really, really want it. Spiritual motivation. I really want that. But that seems to be quite different from this relaxed serenity, right? They are not different. One must understand this. This is serenity as far as calmness, as far as the world is concerned. And a joy, a delight in God, in spirituality. You like meditation. You like hearing about God, reading the life stories of saints and avatars. You like spiritual philosophy, Vedanta, or if you're interested in Buddhism, whatever. You like it. A joy is there. It's not like Vedanta classes, Bhagavad Gita. Somebody asks, when will you finish? Now that's what you don't ask when you're having fun. How long do I have to do it? It's like, I know it's good for me, but I wish it would be over. No. Those who would sit and listen to Sri Ramakrishna talking, hours and hours, they'll be delighted. Not all of them. Many would come out of curiosity. There are very funny incidents. 2 friends have come, and one of them is entranced by Sri Ramakrishna's talk. So always he would talk about God, nothing else. And the other friend is getting restless, and he whispers, "Let's go." And this friend says, a little more, just a little more. Once, twice. Then his friend gets up and says, "Okay, you sit here. I'll go sit in the boat." They had come in a boat. So I'm going to sit in the boat, wait for you there. Like I'm going to I'll go out there and sit in the car. What happens? This person likes it. Likes talk about spirituality, philosophy, joyful. You find joy in it. So joy in divine things and serenity as far as the world is concerned. That is prasāda. That is fully compatible with vyakulata. Vyakulata means a divine restlessness. Sri Ramakrishna would say, when he would see the sunset, he would weep profusely and say, "One more day has gone, O mother." God to him was mother. "One more day has gone, O mother, when will I see thee? I have not seen. One more day has gone by without seeing thee." Seeing means having the divine mystic vision of Kali. So that is divine restlessness. This will continuously, consistently uplift our minds, purify our hearts. The more this divine restlessness is there, more purification. And serenity as far as the world is concerned. See, what makes a person worldly? The same restlessness and delight in worldly things makes a person more and more worldly. Vyakulata is a neutral word. Vyakulata means restlessness. But Vyakulata means restlessness about what? If I'm restless about worldly things, when will I get that? When will that person come? When will this happen? When will my favorite sports team win? Today, in that seminar on unknowability, one interesting thing that they had a survey of several thousand people, and they asked the people, would you like to know if it was possible, would you like to know the exact date and place of your death? More than 80% said no. I was surprised, because I would like to know. Yeah. It's interesting. For a spiritual person, physical death is not the end of things. So it's an interesting event. For whom is... And I was thinking, I was surprised. People don't want to know. But then later I thought it's not surprising. For whom it would be terrible. Who deep within believes this life is all. And I don't want it to end, no matter how terrible. But if you are spiritual in any tradition of the world, then you know that this life is not all. It's one page in a book which we are turning over, page after page. This is basic. Such a person who believes this world to be all, this body to be all, this little life to be all, that person will be terrified of death. Ernst Becker wrote that Pulitzer Prize winning book, The Denial of Death. It goes very well. I didn't tell the professor that if it is true that one of the most profound impulses we have is to deny death, the inevitability of death, psychologically deny it, then obviously I wouldn't want to know when I'm going to die. And one of the questions in that questionnaire was, in that survey, would you like to know the outcome of the sports match of your favorite team in some game? And most people said yes. That I'm curious about. My own death, it's not that I'm not curious about my own death. It's just that I can't think about it. Think about it, no problem at all. No, really. If we knew that we have died thousands of times, then it would be, one more death, okay, fine. So what we are upset about and what we find joy in, that decides whether we will be uplifted, become more sublime or more worldly. If you are upset about not realizing God, if you are upset, if you find joy in thinking about God, that joy and that being upset actually continuously helps you onward in spiritual life. But if my mind is upset about worldly things, so the practice here, the principle here is, try to maintain serenity about worldly events. When things go your way, do not be overjoyed. Nice things happen, say, okay, nice, I know it's nice. You're allowed to give a little smile, good. Things don't go our way, you say, oh, too bad, fine, that's all right. One Swami in Chennai, he put it so well. He said, Vedanta should enable you to do this much, to go from what to so what. On the basis of Vedantic learning, forget enlightenment is maybe far away. Right now, on the basis of a Vedantic understanding, if you're spiritual in any way, this should be the effect. If you are devoted to God in any form, or if you are a seeker after self-knowledge in any form, this should be the effect. To whatever happens in the world, especially bad things, unexpected, unwanted, unpleasant, so what? There'll be an initial reaction, what? But then it's so what? That kind of serenity regarding happenings in the world. Those who get very happy about nice things are going to get very unhappy about unpleasant things. You are opening yourself. The higher they fly, the harder they fall. Our Swami Atma-Rupanji was telling us, see, in this country, we are always expected to be excited. Yeah, aren't you excited for anything? And if you don't have a huge smiley, there's something wrong with you, terribly wrong with you. Prozac. Aren't you excited? Why should you be excited? So he gives this funny example. He says, a new cereal has come out. And the advertisement shows that a cereal has come out. Wow, this is great. This is fantastic. Wow. And no. Nothing is no food is worth saying that for. If you react like that to a new cereal, there's something deeply wrong with you. Yeah, you can say, nice, fine. That's all right. So as far as worldly events are concerned, neither too much excitement when things go your way, and nor too much disappointment or reaction, and frustration or unhappiness or anger when things do not go your way. If the mind stays with God or in your particular preferred spiritual mode, be happy there. Another point, a little deeper point. Whether it is vyakulata, the divine, that restlessness, worldly or spiritual, or it is this prasāda, a calm delight, profound delight, worldly or spiritual. In that state of the mind, the Sanskrit word is dravita, which means melts. The inner being, the subtle being within, our inner psyche, as if it not physically melts, but it melts means it becomes soft, impressionable. The sadhu said, dravit ho jata hai. It as if the inner being melts. And at that point, it's like wax. When you want to put an impression on it, in the old days, they used to put a stamp on it. They would melt it first and then put the stamp on it. And that it would retain the stamp. So when this inner being is melted by calm, peaceful happiness, or by a restlessness, by delight or by restlessness, at that time, whatever you're entertaining, that object of delight or restlessness, that will be imprinted deeply upon the mind. Therefore, the delight or that restlessness should not be wasted on the world. If you do it with anything with the world, a person, a relationship, even things which are nice, many people, children, are the cause of this. Both delight and more than that, restlessness. It's not a divine restlessness. And the more you do that, the more strongly those impressions are driven into the mind. That should be done for God. If you're going to be unhappy, be unhappy that you have not realized God yet. If you're going to take delight, be delighted in the thought of God, whichever way delights you. Tulsidas, the great poet saint medieval time in India, he said that Krishna and the gopis, talking about the love of the gopis for Krishna, they wept for him. He says, even the unhappiness of weeping for God is greater than the greatest happiness that gives much more happiness than the greatest happiness that the world can provide. Let me repeat that. Even the unhappiness of weeping for God, of missing God, the divine unhappiness, it gives you more happiness than the greatest happiness that the world can provide. Viraha, it's called viraha. Viraha is missing God, unhappy for God, for that I do not, the absence of God. So they have it in any kind of devotional mysticism, Christian devotional mysticism, Vaishnava devotional mysticism. Advaita is, it's right here, right now. What are you missing? They are very dry people. So, yeah. Yes.
Swamiji, could the melting of the heart be like when we experience tragedies too, like some close one die?
True. It's a very good question. If we experience that tragedy, that unhappiness, any kind of worldly unhappiness also, a skillful way would be the sadhaka, the spiritual practitioner, would try to connect it to God. So I'm weeping for something in the world, but I connect it to God, so that actually I'm weeping for God. The way to do that is to put your unhappiness at the feet of the Lord. That I, your son or daughter, I am unhappy, I am weeping for this. Oh my Lord, take care of this. So I connect it to my beloved. These are all methods, skills in bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. So these are points I wanted to make about serenity and restlessness. Both are useful when they are connected to God. Both are dangerous when they are connected to the world. Taking delight in the world or being restless with the world makes you more worldly. Taking delight in God or being restless for God makes you more spiritual. Now once that prasāda, that serene delight in God comes, then what happens? 65. Oh look, the commentator said exactly that in Sanskrit 700 years ago. Prasāde satit king syad. If that prasāda comes, then what happens? So the connecting. 65th verse. Prasāde sarva-duḥkhānāṁ. Prasāde sarva-duḥkhānāṁ. Hānir asyopajāyate. Hānir asyopajāyate. Prasanna-chetaso hyāśhu. Prasanna-chetaso hyāśhu. Buddhiḥ paryavatiṣhṭhate. Buddhiḥ paryavatiṣhṭhate. When that serene joy in God, that's how I'm translating prasāda. There is delight. So prasāda is actually difficult to translate into English because it has the meaning of delight, a kind of happiness, a pure happiness. It also has the meaning of prasanna-cheta, that means a kind of wholesome calmness of mind. When that happens, two results will be there. One is sarva-duḥkhānāṁ hānir asyopajāyate. One overcomes all kinds of suffering, unhappiness. And the second one is buddhiḥ paryavatiṣhṭhate. This wisdom, the one which I have learned, which I am trying to practice, that becomes settled, that becomes steady. We are able to hold on to it and actually put it into practice. So this state of mind is very good for spiritual life. Suffering is overcome. In this state of mind, suffering is overcome. In every other state of mind, there is suffering. What is the other state of mind? Where I'm trying to fulfill, trying to get happiness from the world. So if I get happiness from contact with desirable objects in the world, what I like to eat, the person I like, the company of the person I like, the activity I like, the job I like, the place I like, the clothes I like, the contact with these things, it gives a flash of pleasure in the mind. But that's very worldly. And that creates only desire for more. And immediately we get what is called satiated, used to it. And then we want more and more of that, or more varieties of that. So even when you succeed in getting what you want in worldly life, that really is not conducive to lasting happiness. And when we do not get what we want in worldly life, the result is immediately unhappiness. So the worldly pleasure, the Buddhists say that even that is pain. Why? Because before pleasure, there is pain, because you have to work hard for it to get what you want. When you have it, then it is not satisfying, that is painful. There is the fear of losing it, that is painful. And then you want more and more of it and different varieties of it, that is painful. And then it will go away. So that is painful also. So the beginning and the end of pleasure is pain. And underneath, when you are enjoying pleasure, it's just pain in disguise. So Buddhists can really rain on your parade. A birthday is just 1 year closer to the end. When the child is born, the text says, when the child is born, that's the beginning of death. The countdown to death. So they can really rain on, but it's true. It's true. And pleasure is pain, and pain of course is pain. It's at least honest. You see, isn't that pessimistic? No, it's realistic. A great Indologist, I forget his name, he said, contrary to our misunderstanding of Indian thought, it is not pessimistic. It is actually optimistic. What is pessimism? When they tell you the situation is bad and there's no hope, it's pessimism. But all systems of Indian thought, except the materialist, Charvaka, but all systems, whether Hindu or Jain or Buddhist, all of them, the whole point is that there is a solution to it. Call it nirvana, moksha, kaivalya, whatever, many ancient names are there for that. There is a possibility of transcending suffering. That is not pessimism. That's actually a very deep optimism. What is pessimism is the modern attitude. What is the modern attitude? We know things are bad, but this is all that there is, so do the best you can. That is optimism. That is pessimism. Things are bad, they're going to get worse, and then you'll die. But this is what, do the best you can as long as you live. This is pessimism. This is pessimism. Prasāde sarva-duḥkhānāṁ hānir asyopajāyate. All sorrows are overcome when you have that serene joy in spiritual matters. And buddhiḥ, hyāśhu, the word ashu means quickly. For such a person, what the person learns, understands and decides this is good, that person can do it in life. This is a very big thing. Why is it that after reading so many things and attending so many seminars and workshops and classes and making up our mind and a New Year's resolution that I'm going to do this, I'm going to make these and that and the other change in my life, and yet years later we are not really making many big changes in our lives. Why? Why are we unable to do that? It's because nothing wrong with those ideals. Nothing wrong with our resolution also. What's wrong is with the execution. The execution is in the hands of the sensory system and the mind. They are not cooperating with us. Whatever you choose to do, you do it for 2 days and then don't do it for 3 more days. So 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. That's the problem. And the problem is with the sensory system and with the mind. Prasanna-chetaso hyāśhu buddhiḥ paryavatiṣhṭhate. For a person with this serene and joyful mind, serene and joyful in God, the intellect, the understanding becomes quickly converted into practice. And then he says just the opposite, comparing it. If you don't have that, then what happens? 66. A very nice verse. Nasti buddhi ayuktasya, nasti buddhi ayuktasya, nacha yuktasya bhavana, nacha yuktasya bhavana, nacha bhavayata shanti, nacha bhavayata shanti, ashantasya kuta sukham, ashantasya kuta sukham. Understanding is not steady in a person who is not focused. Yukta means focused in spiritual life. Concentration. The person who is not focused, is scattered. For that person, the understanding is not steady. And without clarity, there is no meditation. For a person who is not focused, meditation also is not possible. Nacha yuktasya bhavana. Nacha bhavayata shanti. And without meditation, without assimilating these spiritual truths in meditation, making it one with yourself, no peace is possible. And without peace, without shanti, kutas sukham, where is this spiritual joy? This spiritual joy he's talking about comes after the peace attained through meditation. Interesting analysis. Sukha, Shanti, Ananda. I mentioned it a couple of days ago. Sukha means pleasure. The Sanskrit word sukha normally means pleasure. Not here though. Here it means something else. But sukha usually means pleasure. So I like a cookie. I put it on my tongue. And what happens? The desired object comes in contact with the sense object, with the sense organ and produces a flash of pleasure. In Sanskrit, sukhakara vritti. The mind takes the form of a pleasurable sensation. So this worldly pleasure, its basic format is the object should come in contact with the corresponding sense. So I like to eat something when I taste it. I like somebody when I see that person. I like some music when I hear that music. So it's object, sound, sight, taste, coming into contact with the sense organ, and it produces sukha. This is the nature of worldly pleasure. This is sukha. It is. It comes and goes very clearly. It is subject to increase and decrease. More sukha, less sukha. We get used to it, satiated. So we want more and varieties of it. So these are the problems with sukha. I like quoting Somerset Maugham, and he says, if you single-mindedly chase pleasure, very soon you find nothing pleasing anymore. This is sukha, the nature of worldly pleasure. In comparison to this, there is shanti. Shanti means peace. What kind of peace? When you shut down this chasing after worldly pleasure and serenely become centered, mindful, centered inwards, not rushing outwards trying to grasp this and that, and serenely centered inwards, that peace of the quiet mind, that is shanti. Quiet sense organs, quiet mind is shanti. That is peace. Eric Fromm, whom I quoted, he also said a wise thing. He said, pleasure these days, he means our modern society, pleasure these days is basically building up tension and releasing it. What it has become in modern society is a build up tension by advertisement to say, this is nice, I want it. iPhone 7, iPhone 8, iPhone 9, want it. Then you get it, then gone. Now next another thing comes on, want it, builds up, then you get it. So building up tension and releasing it, that is pleasure. The modern form of pleasure. You can see why it leads to unhappiness. Shanti is peace. Notice another thing. Shanti, peace, is of one type only. What I mean by that is, disturbance, as many types of disturbing agents are there, so many types of disturbance. Who said that? One of the professors today in the seminar said, somebody asked Tolstoy, not Tolstoy, one of the, who wrote Anna Karenina? Tolstoy, yeah. Somebody asked Tolstoy, why do you write about unhappy people, unhappy families? He says, happy families are all happy in the same way, but unhappy families are all happy in different ways. So you have more to write about. There are many more things to be unhappy about. So, disturbance, unhappiness, pain, they're all different. Anger is one kind of disturbance. But quietening that anger, akrodha, when the anger is gone, that peace. Greed is another kind of disturbance. Greed and anger are different. They feel different. Right? You are with me? You understand? Greed is different. Lust is different. Envy is different. Ambition, worldly ambition, different. But their cessation, the peace that follows when they are completely gone, it's all of the same kind. Peace is of one kind only. The absence of anger, the absence of greed, the absence of jealousy, the absence of hatred, the same kind of peace. Peace is one and the same. Disturbance is manifold. Yes.
So me, I have a feeling, I have a philosophy mindset that everything is same, like Advaita.
Yes.
So for me, there is no sin, there is no good, there is no bad, everything is same.
Yeah.
So I enjoy everything.
Right.
I enjoy looking at you, I enjoy sitting, I enjoy breathing, I enjoy talking.
Right.
So for me, that is sukha.
That
Everything is sukha. So there is no dukkha for me, never.
That is true. From an Advaitic perspective, that's true. So this is what I'm saying is from a worldly perspective. Advaitic perspective, that's true. If you see the one reality inside and outside, at least even if we understand that, it's a great step forward. That there is oneness inside and outside.
But
So
my wife is not happy with that.
Yeah, because I think good is good and bad is bad.
For me, bad is also good. Bad is also my children.
true.
I love bad too, equally.
Here is one thing to understand. Good and bad in personal life. Why, if you ask, why do we do bad things personally? It's because, so tell a lie. Why? Either because I'm tempted it will get me something I really want, or I'm scared of losing something, I'm terrified, and therefore I tell a lie. I don't tell a lie out of the spiritual joy of my heart. No. I tell a lie under stress, under duress. Nobody goes around robbing and murdering people as spiritual practice. Notice one thing. So, this is the interesting thing. Therefore, now why would I want something, or why would I be scared of something? It's because I'm not settled in that Advaitic vision. A person who's settled in that Advaitic serenity, the non-dual serenity, what would that person want?
Nothing.
Is basically deep within, is fulfilled. The person may go around doing his job and duty in the world. That's what Krishna told Arjuna to do. But deep within, for one's personal satisfaction, I am happy. And so with this life, with this body and mind, I do things for others. It's not I don't need anything. I'm fulfilled. Being fulfilled myself, I give. So I would not want anything, so not wanting anything, not being afraid also. If I am that reality beyond body and mind, at the worst what could happen? This body will die. And which it will die anyway one day. So I'm not afraid of death. Being not afraid and not depending on the world to fulfill me, I am neither scared nor tempted. Therefore, this is an important point. A person well settled in this settled wisdom will not do bad things. Will not do bad things. Hold on to that. Sri Ramakrishna gives an example. One person who used to teach Advaita, a monk, was a corrupt person. And he came to that the temple, and they saw that he was having an illicit affair. And then Sri Ramakrishna went and said, "Hey, you teach everything high things about Vedanta, but why are you doing that?" And then this monk, he said, "Why? The whole world is false, it's an appearance. Why are you only catching my falsity?" Then Sri Ramakrishna, this is very important, he said, he was at first flabbergasted with this kind of argument. And then he said, "I spit upon such Vedantic knowledge." This is what is happening is, notice what I said earlier, a person who is settled in non-dual knowledge would not be tempted by such things. Why would this person be tempted to do something secret and illicit? Why? If you are really deep inside fulfilled, why would you go out looking for fulfillment, etc., and especially jumping over the fences of moral and decent behavior? So would not do that. What is this person doing? He's not only doing that, also now is justifying his behavior using Vedanta philosophy. So Sri Ramakrishna said, "I spit upon such Vedanta." So remember one thing, a person who is settled in a spiritual, in the vision of oneness, or even convinced, or even practicing that person will not do anything bad. And that person will always try to do good. And whatever is the duty of that person in that particular station of life, if you are a father, you'll take care of your children. If you are an employee in a company, you will do what is expected of you. I mean, whatever is moral and right. So then the person next to you should not have a complaint. If when do we have a complaint against a person who is practicing this kind of philosophy? It's only when we find there's an incongruence between very high philosophical talk and personal life. Then we become upset.
Because he has fear. Because he loved me too much, attachment. It's fear. Then I change,
No,
I don't need anything.
And absolutely not. There's no need to be afraid. The more spiritually centered you are, the more lovable you are. The more dependable you are. Whom would you want on your side? Suppose you're in court one day. See, a person who is fanatically committed to the truth, come what may be quite irritating. But if one day you are in court and that person has to give a testimony on your behalf, you would want such a person on your side. So it's always good one is very lucky to have a person who's spiritual. But of course, one should be careful. Don't have a flag waving kind of spirituality. I am more spiritual than you. No. A truly spiritual person feels one with everybody. Does not feel superior to. Actually, genuinely will not feel superior to anybody. Because that one reality which you see is present everywhere. It's there within you and equally within him and her and your wife and me. So it's one everywhere. Now, if the children are doing something bad, you need to scold them. Of course you'll scold them. Advaita Vedanta is not against moral life. It in fact provides the foundation to morality. Why do we need morality? Truth is a better expression of that Brahman, that one reality, than falsehood. Peace is a better expression than anger. Calmness, better expression than irritation. Right? Yeah. A spiritual person is much more dependable. Genuinely spiritual person. Yeah, much more dependable. It's those who are, we'll come to it, lack of focus, is those whose minds are strongly enmeshed in worldliness. You can never depend on such people. In the worst of circumstances, they'll abandon you. Because they are guided by forces beyond their control. Do you still remember your question? Yeah.
I thought the question was slightly hypothetical because once you get to the Advaita state, why would you distinguish between I and her? Is there really a distinction because you're already identifying everything to be you?
True, but at the Vyavaharika level, you see yourself and you see the other person also. Now the other person you're feeling that the other person has a concern about me. Uh-huh. So deep within you are one with everybody. But does that worry the other person? It shouldn't.
Does it worry me or does it worry?
No, you're saying it worries the other person.
Right.
So what about that? It should not. I'm saying that it should not worry the other person. If you have spiritual people in your family, you're very happy with that. One lady asked Swami Ashokananda in the Bay Area in 1950s that I'm losing interest in many things that other married women of my age, they do, parties and stuff like that. And Ashokanji was very stern. He said, when you start coming on this path, people will think that, oh, mom is no fun anymore. She's become boring. But the friends, they start moving away from you. Good riddance, I say. But after some time, that will change into indifference towards you. And after some time, it will change into a liking towards you. A dependence, liking, reliance. That will happen. But try to keep the spirituality under cover. Nobody likes sanctimoniousness. We'll do this verse next time then. Focus is something. All right, let me talk about it a little bit. We'll do it now. So focus is very important. The difference between an ordinary person and a great person lies in the degree of concentration. Swami Vivekananda himself, he said. Remember, these are the practices towards enlightenment or stabilization of enlightenment. So one of the things necessary for this practice is focus. And this focus will not come if a lot of worldly desires are there. One day that person desires success, another day desires appreciation, another place it desires nice food, music, something like that. All of those are fine, but they should not worry you. If they are there, very good. If they are not there, even better. That should be the position. And that does not mean you will go around for stopping other people from enjoying that. No, not at all. Yeah. So, when the senses are under control, focus becomes natural. One thing I noticed about Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swami Vivekananda, the direct disciple, in fact, All the saints, the lives I've read, they're very different from each other. They're all very different from each other. But one of the common qualities they had was a kind of determination to hold on to one thing and finish it. There's so many stories about their lives. I think it was, who was it? Swami Trigunatitananda, who sits down in the Baranagar monastery and he's doing japa, repeating the mantra. And his brothers, other monks, they get worried. He is not coming for food, he's missing his food and sleep and all. And they said, brother, come and take food and then you can go and repeat the mantra. He said, no, I will repeat it until I get enlightenment. I don't want to eat. I could die. So finally a compromise was worked out. He had great reverence for Swami Shivananda. So Trigunatitananda Maharaj had great reverence for Swami Shivananda there. So he said, on one condition I will eat. The brother, the Swami Shivananda, Tarakda, he has to sit next to me and repeat the mantra. I will touch him and eat quickly. And then I will start to... Yeah. All of them had that. Swami Vivekananda. We are reading the life story of Sri Ramakrishna in childhood. One thing that was noticed was a tremendous tenacity. He would forget everything else when he took up one thing and finished that. So focus. This is called yuktaha. Remember, Vedanta is 3 steps. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Shravana is when you receive the teachings. There must be focus. There must be listening sharply. Alert. That's why in older days, I have also seen teachers who would make you memorize the text. That requires some commitment to memorize the text. And I have heard of teachers who were so strict, whatever was taught in the last class, you would have to come and repeat those, at least the text, the verses. If one could not repeat it, you'd be shunned forever, banned forever from the class. So that kind of commitment. That is the first stage, Shravana, to receive the teaching. Once the teaching is received, if that kind of commitment is not there, that manana, the next stage, that the thinking over it, clarifying, that will not come. Clarity will not be there. And without that clarity, bhavana here means meditation. Without that clarity, Vedantic meditation, nididhyasana, is not possible. It's not possible. And without that meditation, he says, peace will not come. And without peace, that sukha, he mentions here sukha, that sukha is not worldly happiness. It's not even the prasāda which was mentioned earlier, a serene joyfulness, not even that. It is the bliss of God realization. Here the commentator says, sukha here is not that worldly happiness. Mokshanandaha, the bliss of moksha, brahmananda, the bliss of God realization, enlightenment. So that's the final sukha. That does not come unless the mind is completely at peace. And the mind is not completely at peace unless you have meditated upon the teachings. And you cannot meditate upon the teachings unless there is clarity. There is no clarity unless there is focus. So focus, clarity, meditation. Then only peace and liberation. Focus at Shravana level, clarity at Manana level, and meditation, that is Nididhyasana level. One final... Did somebody have a question? There is a very silly joke, but I must tell you because I just remembered this. So it's actually a pun on words. Those who are Indians, you speak Bengali or Hindi, you will understand it immediately. Otherwise it will be a not very funny translation. But anyway, I'll try. So this verse, Nasti buddhi ayuktasya nacha ayuktasya bhavana. So, cha ayukta. Ayukta means the one who is not focused. So that person, meditation is also impossible. Neither clarity is possible, nor meditation is possible. But the actual Sanskrit words, if you see, cha yuktasya, na cha yuktasya bhavana. So one Swami, he used to love tea, which in Bengali and Hindi is cha, this word. And somebody criticized him, why are you addicted to tea? What kind of a monk are you? So don't you know the Gita says, na cha yuktasya bhavana? There is no meditation possible without a cup of tea. No, he's not very far from the truth. The Japanese tea ceremony is actually a part of Zen practice. Yeah.
I think that's the caffeine keeps you awake and alert.
I don't know. But there are stories. Bodhidharma, who spread Buddhism to China, Tibet and China. He is also the source of Kung Fu, Bodhidharma. In China it's called Daruma, or Japanese I think it's called Daruma. So he was an Indian monk from Andhra. And he went, so there are many stories about him in China. And he taught them meditation. He also introduced a set of exercises which later became Shaolin Kung Fu. So, you can't imagine, unthinkable, Indians teaching Kung Fu to the Chinese, it's just the opposite. But if you look it up, the story is there. That's actually the legend in China, not in India. We don't know much about him in India. So one of the stories is, how did tea come? So this Daruma, Bodhidharma, he was meditating. He would face the wall of the cave and stare at that and meditate for hours and hours. One day he felt sleepy. His eyes closed in spite of himself. It's an occupational hazard of a meditator. Eyes closed in spite of himself. And so he was so furious with himself, he tore off his eyelids so that he could never, it's a bit gruesome, and then he threw them away so that he could never close his eyes again. And the story is, for where those eyelids fell, from that a plant grew. And the leaves of that plant, if you crush it and put it in hot water and drink it, you will not feel sleepy. So that's tea. That's the story. Just No, I'm not saying that you have to take tea before meditation. And certainly not coffee, because that agitates the mind. Very good. On this note, Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.